Assalamu alaikum. We are going to discuss some current affairs from The Economist, and this edition from April 18th to 24th April 2020. So these are the current affairs which you can see the heading of this page. The word this week politics means The Economist, April 18th 2020. We are going to discuss all these. The first news about Donald Trump said that data suggested America was past the peak of the COVID-19 outbreak as he moted guidelines to reopen the economy. The president created a council to look at the options, some of whose members were surprised to be included. Earlier, he started a row with state governors who are trying to coordinate the lifting of some restrictions. He claimed they needed his permission. The Constitution says they don't. When a journalist asked Mr. Trump what he had done all February to prepare for COVID, he called her disgraceful. The second news is also about Mr. Trump said he would suspended American funding to the World Health Organization, accusing it of pushing China's misinformation on the coronavirus. Okay. Bernie Sanders bowed out as the sole remaining chancellor to Joe Biden and endorsed his hitherto rival for president. Mr. Sanders said he was endorsing Mr. Biden now so they can unite the Democratic Party in trying to defeat Mr. Trump in November's election. Okay. Bernie Sanders, the former vice president of America. Now, the current vice president is Mr. A sailor serving on the USS Trader resolved dead from the COVID-19. More than 600 crew members have now tested positive, including the former captain who was sacked by the Navy after the ask for help. He was fired for seeking assistance outside the proper lines of communication. Next news from the South Korea. South Korea went ahead with legislative election despite the COVID-19 epidemic. Turnout was high. The ruling Manju Democratic Party won an outright the majority in the unicameral National Assembly. Before the election, Manju had been governing in coalition with several smaller parties. Okay, next news from India. Migrant workers protested in Bombay and other Indian cities as the government extended the country's 3-week-old lockdown by a further 3 weeks. The workers want to be able to return to their home villages but are not able to because of the suspension of public transport. The government did relax restriction on farming and construction work. Next news from Bangladesh. Bangladesh hanged Abdul Majid on one of group of former army officers who killed the country's founding father Mujibur Rahman during a military coup in 1975. Majid had been convicted of murder in absentia in 1998 and had been in hiding in India until last month. The current Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina Wajid is Mujib's daughter. Next from the Saudi-led coalition fighting the Houthi rebels in Yemen began a unilateral 2-week ceasefire aimed at stemming the spread of COVID-19. Shortly after the move was announced, Yemen confirmed its first case of virus, though it has carried out little testing. Years of war have devastated the country's health system. Despite calls for a ceasefire in Libya, fighting between the internationally recognized government and forces led by Khalifa Haftar, a rebellious general, continued. The government seized two towns, Sarman and Sabratha, on the coast, but it struggled to deal with power cut in the beside capital of Tripoli. Next news from Iraq. Iraq's president nominated Mustafa al Khadimi, the intelligence chief, as prime minister. Mr. Khadimi is the third person tapped for the job since November when Adel Abdul Mehdi resigned under pressure from anti government protests. The previous two nominees failed to win enough support in the parliament to create a government. Okay. Economic shutdown are leading to food price inflation and shortage in several African countries including Zimbabwe, Kenya and Sudan. Aid groups such as the World Food Programme is struggling to respond because of restriction on movement. Efforts to contain Ebola in the Democratic Republic of Congo suffered a setback with the emergence of three new cases, the first in 54 days. The G20 said its member governments would suspend loan repayments from developing economies until the end of the year. It encouraged private creditors to do the same. Separately, the IMF postponed repayments from 25 countries. A group including American anti-drug agents and Interpol arrest one of Brazil's most wanted suspected criminal, Galbrito Aprecidio dos Santos, in Maputo, Mozambique capital. He allegedly trafficked cocaine worldwide as a leader of first command of the capital, a gang based on Sao Paulo, and evaded capture for 20 years. Several European countries moved to ease their lockdowns. In Spain, work was allowed to restart in some factories on construction sites, and in Italy, some small shops were allowed to reopen. Germany is allowing large shops to trade and schools to open. Social distancing measures remain in place, but France and Britain extended their lockdowns into May. Death toll continued to rise across Europe, but in almost all instances at diminishing rates. The European Commission, stung by criticism that it has been absent during the crisis, outlined a roadmap that it hoped European members states will follow to coordinate the easing of restrictions. European Union ministers agreed on an aid package of up to 540 billion euro for hard hit countries. The European Central Bank had said up of 1.3 trillion euro was needed. Boris Johnson was discharged from hospital where he had been admitted to intensive care. The British Prime Minister in convalescing at the Czech as an official residence. Taiwan reported no new coronavirus cases on April 14, the first such interlude in more than a month. China recorded score of new cases, including an increase caused by local infection. A cluster of cases was discovered on China's northeast border with Russia. Russia reported similar record daily surge in new cases, bringing it total to 25,000. New York City cumulative death toll soared past 10,000. Officials added to 3,700 previously unrecorded deaths from the disease to the roll. America's Supreme Court said it would hold its first ever hearing by the telephone conference starting next month. Okay, thank you. These all the previous week's current affairs from the Economist magazine, which was published for 18th April to 24th April. Thank you so much. Pakistan Zindabad.